Executive Office, Nicole David Honeyford.
We do not underestimate the importance of having a strategic focus on Europe as our closest neighbour. Following Brexit, our officials continue to explore how best to engage strategically to manage the challenges of our new relationship, as well as to maximise the opportunities it presents. That work has been considered as part of the development of the new overarching international relations strategy, and it will intersect with broader executive and departmental strategies and actions. We live in an increasingly interconnected world, one where developments and decisions elsewhere impact on us directly. If we are to drive prosperity and tackle disadvantage across our communities and to deliver on our programme for government ambitions, we must engage with key international partners, and this will be important in setting out our longer-term approach to global engagement.
Mr Honeyford.
Thank you, First Minister, for your response. Our relationship, regardless of Brexit, our relationship with the rest of Europe has become more complex and difficult, and as citizens and business it's absolutely essential that we engage positively and productively with our European neighbours. So can you commit today to advancing a strategy so that there's something concrete in place before the end of this mandate?
Yes, I can tell you that we're moving closer towards finalising an international relations strategy which will obviously focus on all of our international relations, but in particular in a post-Brexit world, our relationship with Europe more generally. And I can say to the member that, certainly there's a recognition that Europe remains one of our most significant partners for trade, for investment, for cultural exchange. And I think that when you look at our own international relations strategy, it's going to be supported by both thematic and regional delivery plans, and I think that's all going to be important. But we're engaging constantly, I think, in an ever more increasing number with the ambassadors that are choosing to visit here and actually to talk to us about building those relationships, and I think that's going to be really, really important. So I'm hoping to be able to come to the House in the near future with a new international relations strategy.
Declan Kearney.
Minister, if I can turn to the economic element of our relationship with Europe. You mentioned in your TCI speech a few days ago that the North is now can boast that the Titanic Centre is one of the most attractive visitor experiences in Europe, that we are now looking at cruises becoming more popular in this destination than any other part of Europe in a relative sense. And then in the context of the all-island economy,
Mr. Kearney.
In the context of the all-island economy, our exports are growing. Therefore, Minister, would you agree with me that now is the time for us to maximise our access to the dual market economy?
First Minister.
Yes, in short, absolutely. You mentioned the TCI conference. That was a conference last week that I spoke at, and the Taoiseach also spoke at. And the whole theme of the conference itself was around clustering and how we work together. And I took the opportunity actually at that event to talk about MEGA, which is a fantastic example of advanced manufacturing coming together right across my constituency and neighbouring constituencies. And I think that it's a real good example of how collaboratively we can work together. As you've rightly referenced, the dual market access that we have, and that's what I spoke about at the event, the fact that we now have that unique access for our local businesses in terms of trade freely with both the EU and the British markets, two of the world's largest international markets, giving us access to more than 500 million customers and a net worth of over 6 trillion. So that's why it's really, really important that we continue to reach for all of those opportunities to create more jobs and to grow our economy. We have this unique selling point now, then we have to really maximise it, and that's certainly at the heart of the work of the Economic Department and through Dr. Caoimhe Archibald. And as I said earlier, in terms of international relations more generally, in the last month we have met a considerable number of ambassadors that are choosing to visit here to talk about areas of partnership, areas where we can engage, areas where we can grow international trade. So I think we need to continue to grab on to the dual market access and really maximise it to our benefit.
Edmund Loughlin.
The UK Chancellor recently announced plans for a new youth mobility agreement with the EU. Has the Executive made any formal representations to ensure that our young people here are included in that scheme?
Minister.
Yes, we actually raised this issue at a recent meeting we had with a British Government Minister whose name just now escapes me, but we did actually have the discussion around youth mobility Clearly there's a whole new strategic focus with a new partnership arrangement between both the British Government and the EU, and the youth mobility schemes built into that. But our young people should be afforded the opportunity to have that freedom of movement, so we will continue to make that case.
Timothy Gaston.
Question 2.
Recent comments quoted within the BBC Borderland podcast are a matter for those who were interviewed. Our department has been representing the interests of victims and survivors for many years. We remain committed to ensuring that their needs continue to be met. A key commitment within the Victims and Survivors strategy is to provide support for victims and survivors, for their families as they move forward from experiences of the past. The strategy also recognises the importance of truth and justice, and the need to work towards greater societal recognition of the hurt, loss and trauma of our past. We will continue to provide support for victims and survivors in dealing with the legacy of the past, and we will take a flexible approach to deal with changing needs and circumstances.
Mr. Gaston.
The front page of today's Irish News is a story about the revelations in a podcast about the Enniskillen Poppy Day massacre. Does the First Minister agree that the IRA were guilty of murder? No weaseled or honeyed words, First Minister. Was Enniskillen an example of mass murder, yes or no?
First Minister.
As the member knows, and I've said it on many occasions in this House, there are many injustices and tragedies in our past, and our job is to try to heal the wounds of the past. Our job is to try to ensure that we support victims and survivors. There are many people who've been impacted by the conflict here, and we shouldn't be selective, and we also equally shouldn't try to pawn victims in this place for political point scoring. Let's work together to support all victims and survivors.
Dillon.
First Minister, I know that you have previously acknowledged that every death during the conflict years left a deep legacy of suffering and trauma. Given the deep suffering and trauma carried by so many families and victims right across our society and beyond, how can we ensure that in this chamber there is less petty politicking and further using and abusing of victims, and that we conduct ourselves in a manner that is about acknowledging all loss, with all taking responsibility for what was done in their name?
Thank you to the member for the question, and also for the tone in which you presented it, because I think it is important that we reflect on the fact that at the heart of this conversation are people who have been impacted by conflict and people who have been hurt, and we must never forget all those that have lost their lives, who've died or have been injured, or indeed their families who still deal with the grief. I've said it in this chamber again many times that I regret every single loss of life in the conflict, and I will work every day with others to ensure that we continue the work of reconciliation, that we continue to support our victims and survivors. But the member is absolutely right to highlight that the pain of victims and survivors should never be used to score points in this place or to reopen old wounds time and time again, week after week. We'd be much better working together in this chamber to try to heal the wounds of the past and actually build a brighter and better future.
Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The First Minister has previously said that there was no alternative to IRA violence, and her party colleague Michelle Gildernew has now stated that murder was justified. How can victims have any confidence in the First Minister and her party to represent their interests?
I've set out in my original answer just the work that we are carrying forward in our executive office in terms of support for victims and survivors, and we will continue to do so. The comments reflected by other commentators in a podcast or any other public forum are for them to answer for.
Paula Bradshaw.
Speaker, and thank you, First Minister, for your answers so far. So given the change of focus of the new legacy proposals that are put forward in the joint framework, what work will your department do with others to ensure that we can see a delivery of sustainable long-term reconciliation on this island? Thank you.
Minister.
So the member will be aware that just towards the end of last week the British Government have published the legislative text, so I think we're all taking a look through that to ensure that it does what it needs to, which is to command the support of victims and survivors, and equally that it's human rights compliant. I think there's an opportunity to help all those people who've been impacted by conflict with the right legislation, but it has to be the right legislation, and it has to meet those tests, and it has to command the confidence of victims and survivors. In terms of reconciliation, I think that's the work of all of us who are elected to this chamber. In terms of reconciliation, I think we all should step outside our comfort zones, we all should reach out to each other, and we all should do everything we can to build a better future. I certainly will continue to lead the way in that regard, and I know that many others in this chamber are also committed to that too.
John Burrows.
Mr. Speaker, I was on Nolan last week with the First Minister's former colleague Francie Malloy, and he said that anyone with information about Republican atrocities like the Enniskillen bomb should give it to the police for criminal investigation. Does she believe that anyone with information about crimes committed by either loyalist or Republican terrorists should give it to the lawful authority to support a criminal investigation? Yes or no?
And again, as I said previously, I'm not going to comment on how others choose to conduct themselves in a public forum, but I also would encourage you not to be selective in terms of what you choose to pick out. I think it's important that we deal with the past holistically. I think it's important that people information do come forward. I think it's important that we find a way to heal the wounds of the past, but we'll only do that if we work together instead of point scoring.
Greg Hall.
The international relations strategy is under development with intersect with broader executive and departmental strategies and actions. It will be important in setting out our longer-term approach to global engagement. Our officials have engaged extensively with partners in local government in the development of our strategy. They host quarterly discussions with representatives of each of the local councils to ensure a shared awareness of incoming visits and the work of our overseas offices. This encourages local engagement in the development of our international relations policies and design of programmes for visiting delegations. Our officials work to ensure delegations can visit all of our local councils and witness the varied sectoral expertise, tourism offering and opportunities for investment at first hand. We continue to show, or take every opportunity to show, that we are open to partnerships that support our economic growth and deliver outcomes for all of our citizens.
Carl.
Thanks, First Minister, for that answer. First Minister, you'll be aware that Belfast City Council earlier this year passed a motion, including with the votes of Sinn Féin councillors, to express objections to Belfast International Airport being used by US warplanes. At least 60 of them have went through Aldergrove this year. Can you give an update on conversations with Belfast City Council on this matter and any actions that you've taken as First Minister to presumably express your opposition to this fact?
As the member is aware, we share the same position in relation to this. This issue, however, is not something that there will be a joint executive office position on, and therefore the council won't get a joint executive office correspondence. We did receive a letter from the council letting us know just about the motion and inviting comment. The reality is international relations aren't involved. This is not it's an accepted matter for the British government. However, we obviously engage, as I said earlier, in terms of ambassadorial engagements, but the operation of military aircraft and its use of airports is not devolved to here. But personally, I concur with the position that was adopted by Belfast City Council.
Carl McKillop.
Cancula, First Minister, could you further expand on what the Executive Office is doing in terms of building international relations? Thank you.
Yeah, as I've already made reference to, even in the last month alone, the Deputy First Minister and I have met with ambassadors of Germany, Italy, Bulgaria, Romania, Belgium, Finland, Estonia, as well as the EU Ambassador to Britain, Pedro Serrano. And in all those engagements, we take the opportunity to promote our trade, tourism, higher education, digital industries, cybersecurity, fintech, as well as the unique access to both markets. Then we've got our offices in Washington DC, we've got Brussels, we've got Beijing, and they all have a key role in promoting our interests as we continue to strengthen our reputation as a really world-class destination to work, live, invest and study. And then we also, on top of that layer, we have the Invest NI offices, 25 offices in key locations globally. So looking ahead, our new international relations strategy will really build upon all of those engagements that currently happen, but then look towards the change in picture in a post-Brexit world, even internationally, and what's happening. There's a lot to reflect on. So I'm hopeful that in the coming period we'll be here again discussing our international relations strategy.
First Minister, given the potential for international partnerships to drive investment in tourism, can you outline what practical role Invest NI and tourism NI have played in shaping the international relations strategy?
There's been considerable amount of engagement across all of these bodies because it's important, as I said earlier, that we join up all the dots. There's a lot of work happening both at an Invest NI level, at a tourism level, in terms of our own office. We've our 25 executive or key locations globally with Invest NI, and then we've got our own 3 offices, Brussels, US and Beijing. You have to overlay all of those areas of work, and that's what you'll see as the product and the outworking of the investment strategy itself.
Cathy Mason.
Through the NSMC Joint Secretariat, our department supports the delivery of all activity under the auspices of the North-South Ministerial Council. The North-South structures are fully operational, with ministers regularly meeting with their counterparts in the Irish Government to take forward activity which benefits both jurisdictions. Just last Friday, we attended what was the 30th plenary meeting of the North-South Ministerial Council, hosted by the Taoiseach in Dublin. We had a very good agenda for that meeting, and we discussed topics including business and trade, infrastructure and investment, emergency planning and preparedness, and ending violence against women and girls, all of which are areas where there are opportunities for us to work together with the Irish Government to deliver better outcomes for our people. We'll be making a full report on that meeting and on the NSMC institutional meeting which took place on the same day to the Assembly in the near future. Looking forward then, arrangements are in place to finalise full series of NSMC sectoral meetings to take place before the end of the year. And in these meetings, executive colleagues will engage with their Irish Government opposite number to discuss the various areas where we can work together for mutual benefit.
Mrs Mason.
Gormilgut, Cancorlia. First Minister, you mentioned that Friday's meeting of the North-South Ministerial Council was indeed the 30th plenary meeting, and this is clearly a very significant milestone. So then, looking ahead, can you outline for us how the Executive can build on that important work that has already been done to deepen cooperation across the island, particularly in the areas of health, infrastructure and economy, and how that cooperation benefits people in both jurisdictions?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. And as I said, in addition to the 30 plenary meetings, there's been over 330 meetings of the Council that have also taken place. That's sustained engagement across all the areas of cooperation, and I think it's very much laying strong foundations for closer engagement and collaboration, and also for planning. There is so much to be gained from working together on these practical everyday issues and actually improving people's lives, whether that be across health or education. The new area that we're now talking about is how we can collaborate on ending violence against women and girls, something that we share common cause in terms of it being such a huge problem right across our island. But we also talked about emergency planning and preparedness, and if the pandemic taught us anything, it was that we needed to have that really strong collaboration across the island. So looking ahead, I want to see that continue to strengthen and to continue to grow those areas, and ensure that we continue to expand it. And then also we have the Shared Island Fund, which the member will know even in our own constituency in terms of the Narrow Water Bridge project. There are so many projects that are now being advanced as a direct result of that, so that's really good, again, practical cooperation and something that we can build on in the time ahead.
Trevor Clark.
Question number 5.
Since we've been in post, attracting inward investment to help grow our globally competitive and sustainable economy has been one of the Executive's key priorities. As First Minister and Deputy First Minister, we have taken an active role in promoting our region and all that it has to offer as a great place to live, work, study and invest. We've been working together with the Economy Minister and other Executive colleagues to show that we are open for business internationally, but also to support our local companies who contribute so much to driving growth and innovation here. In the last 18 months, we've taken this message to the representatives of the world's leading economies, many of whom have come here to visit us to see for themselves just how far we have come. Just this month, we've met with Italian and German ambassadors to explore closer links between our countries. But in the last year, we've had similar conversations with ministers and ambassadors from all sorts of areas, whether it be US, China, France, India, Japan, as well as leading an academic delegation to North Carolina to build our reputation and attract inward investment. We obviously had the Open back in July, and the eyes of the world were very much on us in terms of promoting us to that global business leaders and strengthen our reputation. So I think we're very much becoming a destination of choice.
Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I suppose I could be described as being churlish for going back to the podcast where your party colleague made the comments, but of course you would say that that was her comments, not on behalf of the party. However, in response to your other member for West Belfast, I think it is. You talked about Northern Ireland being a world-class destination. But how on one hand can we say Northern Ireland is a world-class destination? How on the other hand can we say, in terms of the description you give, which was very glowing in terms of Northern Ireland, in terms of what it has to offer, but on the other hand, your executive colleague is making it difficult for the industry of defence to invest in Northern Ireland. How does those two things square?
Well, I don't agree with what you're saying. I think that both right at the heart of the economic plan and project and strategy that the Economy Minister has developed is very much about growing our strong economy. You can see all the opportunities that have been created over the course of the last 18 months since the Executive was formed. We are going to continue to create those opportunities, to create jobs, to grow the economy, to make people's lives better. That's what the strategy is right at the heart of the strategy. And equally at the heart of the strategy is regional balance, ensuring that prosperity is felt right across the board. And I think some of the really good examples of job creation that we've seen in recent days are something to be really celebrated, and we've much more to come.
Emma Sheeran.
First Minister, I know that creating a globally progressive economy and a sustainable economy is at the heart of the programme for government. Could you outline what work has been done to progress that?
Yeah, as I said, our whole focus and right at the heart of the economic plan is a focus on productivity. It's a focus on targeting resources at 7 high potential sectors, using dual market access to drive export growth and investment in talent, with a new skills action plan being launched as well. So it's going to take time. Whenever you're trying to really harness these new investments, it takes a bit of time to sort of see the positive impact of the approach, but we can already start to see that coming through. It's in the 2 years since the Windsor Framework came into effect, export of goods have increased by 2% compared to a decline of 9% in Britain. Cross-border trade between North and South has reached a record 12 billion, up by 7% in 1 year. So that shows you how much things are changing. But our overall economic growth is estimated to have increased by 3.5% over the last year, and that compares to 1.4% in Britain. So I think that's a very strong performance, and despite the rising cost of doing business, despite some of the uncertainty, the restricted access to labour, the introduction of the US tariffs, the constraints on public investment being imposed by London, I think this is testament to the resilience and adaptability of our local businesses, as well as the leadership of Dr. Caoimhe Archibald in the Economy Department.
Stuart Dixon.
So far, First Minister, you'll be aware that the Prime Minister recently, on a business trip, took university chancellors from around the United Kingdom with him. What actions is the Executive Office taking to include our university vice-chancellors in inward and investment to Northern Ireland?
So just last year we went to North Carolina and we led the academic team at that, our delegation for that. I think as part of the new international relations strategy, there'll be an opportunity for us to look more collaboratively. We're a small part of the world, we all know each other, and one of our strengths is, I think, that connectiveness, that agility that we have, where, for example, industry has a need where we can work with our local universities, where we can have a partnership between academia, government and industry, and I think that needs to be really very much at the core of the new international relations strategy, and look for those opportunities where we can actually collaborate and do things together.
No, Tutul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First Minister, I don't doubt, no one doubts there have been lots of photo ops and warm words, but it's the case that people who are going to make investment decisions in this place want to know what the Executive is doing to build road, rail and invest in our crumbling wastewater infrastructure. So all the meetings in the world and all the engagement in the world are to nothing if they don't understand that. When will the investment strategy be published? It's been promised since we came back. There's still no sign of it. When are we actually going to see that document?
An immense amount of work has already informed the key themes that have been set out in our currently draft investment strategy, and they were shaped by over 400 engagements, so a very wide range engagement in terms of formal public consultation, fighting from equality and needs impact assessments, extensive engagement with departments and wider stakeholders. There are still some key considerations to be worked through in finalising the strategy, and it does remain under consideration, but we hope to be able to bring it to the Executive in the very near future, and the timeline for approval and publication of it will then be a matter for the Executive.
Orla Flynn.
Question number 6, please.
We have made substantial progress in advancing and agreeing a new programme for government and secured 1.3 billion of new funding from the Treasury. We've launched the childcare scheme, saving working parents £8 million and expanding support from 15,000 to 24,000 children through a £55 million investment. We've delivered over 100,000 additional outpatient appointment diagnostic tests and inpatient procedures via waiting list initiative, passing the 70,000 target for this mandate. We've invested £45 million via the Regional Balance Fund to boost regional growth, and over £20 million in the Skills Fund, supporting over 9,000 individuals and 1,000 employers through a range of training initiatives linked to our economic priorities. We've committed £3.2 million to community-led initiatives under the End Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, delivered 14 of the 37 actions to protect and restore Lough Neagh, allocated £129 million through the Transformation Fund to reform public services, and established an Office of AI and Digital to drive innovation. And this includes £61 million to expand primary care multidisciplinary teams over the next 5 years, supporting an additional 680,000. We've undertaken a range of engagements to see at first hand really how these programme for government priorities are making a difference and how they're progressing on the ground. I think it's encouraging to see that progress to date. However, we have much more to do to continue to do what matters most in terms of driving positive reform and transformation and improving people's lives.
Gora Míoga to Cancoila and Gora Míoga to the First Minister for that detailed response. Minister, I noted that just during that response you made reference to the launch of the childcare scheme, and you alluded to it at the end of your remarks there, but do you agree that we still need to do much more to try and deliver high quality and affordable childcare for parents?
Yeah, I think you know, it's really good progress to see that we have identified this area and made a difference in terms of investing £55 million in early learning and childcare for the 25-26 year. But of course we have much more to do there, and we want to deliver more, and we want to support more parents. Like what we've been able to deliver to this point has been £8 million in savings to parents. Like that makes a big difference across the board. But we want to do more. We've obviously expanded the preschool education, and that's going to be expanded even more into September of 2026. So incrementally, I think we are making a difference. I want us to be as ambitious as we possibly can to support working families as they get through, because childcare is one of those things that just becomes the biggest bill in the house, and it's so challenging for so many people. So I think this is an area where there is progress. I believe the Minister for Education will be also publishing the childcare strategy and bringing that to the executive, and it's important to think that gets a chance to then be aired, and also have a chance to see how much more progress we can make. With your permission, Junior Minister Riley will answer this question.
Tá mé sásta chu nniuil go bhfuil an prósés arceachta maidir leis an stúrthóir agus na báil eile den ifigum éineacht agus léirí cultartha maidir leis an Commissioner Changa don Gaelic agus maidir leis an Commissioner an tradiisiún na Halbanach Olú agus na Mritanach Olú. Ag teacht an Craig agus Danny muid fógraí a chur amach in Am agus Idra.
Ms Ennis.
Gura Míoga, I thank the Junior Minister for her answer. Does the Junior Minister agree with me that the role of the Irish Language Commissioner will be vital in promoting best practice standards on the use of Irish language in the provision of our public services and for our public bodies, our public authorities?
Minister.
Absolutely. I don't think it will be of any shock to anybody in terms of my stance as someone who was born and reared with the Irish language, so I know and I see and I've learned the incredible importance of an Gaelic. But of course it's so important that the best practice standards in terms of the use of Gaelic are promoted right across public services and indeed across our society. There are more and more people every single day using the language Gakalala. They're going for coffee as Gaelic, they're going to youth clubs, playing sport, doing their messages, singing songs, watching films, TV shows and living their lives all through the medium of Irish. There are people of all different ages and stages of their language journey. I think of my own nephew who's in primary 1 and he's 5 years old and he's completely fluent, or my mother who learnt the language later on in life and was able to gain employment in the Irish medium education sector. So having the language properly supported and visible in public services and provisions is completely essential to building a society which is representative of the richness of culture that exists here, and that's a society that's built on fairness, on equality and on justice.
Le Jenny Dutch Uchter and Conor and Gilligan go an Jima Urhi when will attire Capachain in the Commission at Changacha. And Jiglad Gajira Hain should do, Kajan will attack her and the Capachain Shaw, that's Steve Denaimanas.
leis an ceisian, níl cúisir bí don bhfuilir bí ar óhíomh na ceapahan don próses seo, agus tásúil mar tarráte agam hana féin tásúil agan an fógraíocht formal sinna dhéanú go hana lua. Imróí na rúlanna leis na commissioner seo, tá sé ríhabhachtach lena cinsiú go bé ar neireacht córinse más a cosint agus curtha ar réid an a glúnta talachat, agus tá sé ag dúil go mór leis an ceapahan don na commissioner sin, agus ag dúil go mór le bheith ag obair leis lá a lig nuair tá siad sa ról sin.
Moving on to topical questions. Call Matthew O'Toole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First Minister, it's Book Week, and I dare to ask for a book recommendation. I know you're a fan, from what you've said in this chamber, of the power of positive thinking. When it comes to the public out there, they're much less positive about delivery by the executive. In fact, there is real concern. On a very specific issue, First Minister, can I ask about the delivery of Casement Park? Because the public has lost all trust that that vital project in West Belfast is going to be built. You have said repeatedly, almost ad infinitum, that Casement Park will be built and built on your watch. Do you stand by that, and will construction begin before the end of this mandate?
Yes, I can say that Casement Park remains a flagship project of this executive, and we are actively working at making it happen. This project must be built for all the reasons which the member is only too aware of, in terms of the economic benefit, in terms of the construction itself, but the investment in Gaelic Games is something that's been very long overdue, but I can assure you that I am continuing to work night and day to ensure that it is done.
Mr. O'Toole.
Thank you. First Minister, I didn't ask you whether you were working night and day. I asked you if it would begin before the end of this mandate, so I would like a specific answer to that question. And more broadly, is the Environment Minister right that the executive is sliding into backbiting and what he calls a battle a day?
Well, two different questions there. Yes, Casement Park is going to be started, and yes, Casement Park is going to be built. And I am going to work night and day to ensure that that's the case. On terms of the battle a day comment, those are words which the other Minister, Andrew Muir, has decided to use. There's no doubt this executive arrangement is challenging, but we're in there every day fighting the good fight on behalf of people. We're in there every day taking on the challenges. We're in there every day trying to deliver for people, whilst others sit on the sidelines and just bicker.
Philip McGuigan.
Gurmelgad. First Minister, I welcome that you have been a positive and constant advocate for an end to the genocide in Gaza. Can I ask if you will join with me in calling for immediate, massive and unfettered humanitarian aid to save the starving and beleaguered people of Gaza?
Yeah, I think, I suppose there was a glimmer of hope last week in terms of the ceasefire announcement, and something that obviously we very much welcome, the return of the Palestinian and Israeli political prisoners and the hostages being reunited with families. But I think that needs to be built upon, and I think there needs to be eternal vigilance now, because we all watch on in absolute horror and dismay whenever we see Israel's genocidal war against the Palestinian people. It's an outrage to international opinion, it's a flagrant breach of international law, it's state-sponsored famine, it's ethnic cleansing, it's displacing of people. It is absolutely the biggest humanitarian disaster of our time. And Israel has very much weaponised the hunger, relentlessly slaughtered women and children, forcibly destroyed the majority of Gaza and making it uninhabitable. So I think that devastation that we've all witnessed for the past 2 years is just completely inhumane, and the absolute priority, you're 100% right, has to be getting aid into these people. It has to be allowing the aid and the support and the equipment and everything else that's required to help the Palestinian people.
Mr. McGuigan.
Gurmelgad, and I completely concur that what has happened is inhumane. The First Minister touched on the glimmer of hope and that needs to be built upon. Further to that, can I ask if you agree with me that the impetus for a lasting peace must be grasped?
Yeah, I mean, I would urge, we've already seen a lot of volatility even over the course of the period since the ceasefire has been announced, but I would absolutely urge all sides to faithfully implement the ceasefire agreement and to do so and negotiate in good faith. Like, this must mark a turning point. It must mark a turning point not just for the people of Palestine, but for people even more widely across the entire Middle East, and guarantee a durable peace process for the Palestinian people and for the wider Middle East, including an independent Palestinian state. We need to see that two-state solution. because the root causes that we all know, the root causes of the decades-long conflict between Palestine and Israel, must now be addressed, and this opportunity must be taken. But that also has to include the total military withdrawal of the Israeli military from Gaza and the West Bank, and an end to the illegal occupation and apartheid. The Palestinian people have a right, always did have a right, and continue to have a right to determine their own future. So I sincerely hope that this is the beginning of the end. I sincerely hope that everyone plays a constructive role in securing the peace and justice.
Paul Frey.
Minister, how she promotes Northern Ireland to potential investors as part of her work when her party colleague calls Northern Ireland an SHIT hole.
Those are not my words. They are not words I would ever use. My job is to try to build a more prosperous society here, to create opportunities, to create employment, to make an inclusive society, to work with others, to govern in the best interests of people. That's very much my focus as everybody's First Minister.
I asked the First Minister then to disown her party colleague for the words and terminology she used.
I'm very clear in saying I do not concur with those words. They are her words, and I'm not going to answer to someone else's speak.
Gildernew.
First Minister, I wonder, could you give us an update on the work of the Executive Office's strategic framework to end violence against women and girls?
Yeah, so we launched our strategy back in 2024, and I think this was one of those areas that the Executive was very much united in terms of ending the scourge, that it is a top priority for all of us around the Executive table and for all Executive parties. But as the member knows, our longer term, our strategy is based on prevention and early intervention, and I think some of the work that we have seen thus far is making a real positive difference. We've had the Change Fund investing over $3 million to empower community and voluntary organisations who are right at grassroots level working to tackle root causes. And I think the Power to Change campaign has been really powerful that we've had launched by Justice in terms of the PSNI, challenging unacceptable attitudes and reducing harmful behaviours among men and boys. Far too many women, even as recently as last week, far too many women are continuing to lose their lives in this, what is a deeply ingrained misogynistic society. So I can say to you that we are making progress, but of course we have an awful lot more to do, and it's going to take all of society working together to be able to be successful.
Mr. Gildernew.
I thank the Minister for First Minister for her answer, and I think it's a real good example of where this institution works well, identifying a problem, developing framework and putting resources in and working with partners on the ground to deliver that. In light of that, my own local community development organisation, Brantford Area Rural Development Association, are rolling out a programme to almost 40 young boys and girls in association with White Ribbon. And I wonder, would the First Minister and Deputy First Minister accept an invite to come and visit that project to see the impact of the work?
Well, yes, I certainly would be delighted to visit your Brantford Area Rural Development Association, because it's those projects that are actually making a real difference. It's getting right into the heart of a community. It's talking to those young guys about their role in this and actually helping them to understand just that everyday misogyny and assisting them to be able to make the right decisions and actually turning the tide, and that they have a role in turning the tide. So I would love to come, because I think this is the benefit and the beauty of how we've rolled out this strategy, that it actually filters right down into community level. So yes, I will take up that invitation.
Deirdre Hargey.
Minister, would you be able to provide us with an initial assessment of the British Government's legacy legislation?
Minister.
Yeah, so from the outset, I've said it earlier on actually as well, just in terms of the success of any of the legacy arrangements are really predicated on the confidence of victims and survivors, and the fact that we now have the publication of the last week's legislation by the British Government really now begins to test the credibility of their approach in terms of the framework and then how that's translated into text. Now, perhaps the Deputy First Minister and I won't have the same opinion on this, but certainly in my opinion the inclusion of a clause to change the law and block compensation for former internees is an act of bad faith. That approach was ruled unlawful in 2020, yet here we have the British Government reintroducing this again. I'm also concerned about the national security veto. So what does that mean in terms of people getting access to information that will now firmly fall at the discretion of the British Secretary of State? And I just don't see how that sits well in terms of being able to have a process that people can have confidence in. And then on inquests, the bar for the re-establishment appears to be so high, very few inquests will actually be reopened. So for me, these are all concerns in terms of what we can see at this stage. Obviously, we're still working our way through it. And I suppose the other big glaring issue that's missing from what is being published so far is the issue of the Sean Brown public inquiry. The fact that High Court has ruled 5 times that there must be a public inquiry, and yet the British government seem to be deaf to those legal calls. So we're not going to give up on that, and we're going to continue to push the case and to stand with the family.
Ms Hargett.
Thanks very much for that, First Minister. And as you said there, the call for an inquiry into Sean Brown, which the PSNI Chief Constable and indeed, as you say, the domestic courts have also called for. So do you therefore believe that the needs of victims in this process needs to be core?
Yeah, because they're what it's all about. If we are going to successfully allow victims and families to have access to truth and justice, who have been waiting for far too long to get such access to truth and justice, some for more than 5 decades, then we have to have a process that actually can command confidence, that is human rights compliant, that will enjoy the support of many victims and survivors. And any process in itself has to earn their respect and their confidence, and then it also needs to hold on to their confidence. So I think all of that is going to be tested in the weeks, months and years ahead.
Can the First Minister provide an update as to when the Irish Language Commissioner will be appointed, please?
The announcement earlier this year that 2 commissioners, including an Irish Language Commissioner, will be appointed in the North was a huge step forward. The Irish Language Commissioners will play a central role in promoting Gaelic across public services and everyday life. As was said earlier by the Junior Minister, the language is continuing to flourish at the heart of communities right across the North, including within schools and community life and youth centres. Just generally, it's about enriching people's lives. Many people, like the Junior Minister, have been educated, have been reared and educated through the medium of Irish, and it's important that they see that visibly around them, and it's also important that they have a Commissioner who will stand up for them. So I can say to you that the appointment of the Commissioners is imminent.
Ms Flynn.
Thank the First Minister for that response. And will she commit to continuing to do everything that she can to build equality and protect language and cultural rights right across our society for everyone?
Yes, this is about an inclusive society. This is about building a place where everybody is comfortable. This is about ensuring that the energetic revival of the Irish language is continuing at pace, and that it's something that I very much welcome and something that I very much encourage. And I would say no one has anything to fear from the growth of the Irish language and Gaelic right across our community. It's the respectful thing, it's the inclusive thing, it's about parity of esteem, it's about our culture, it's about our identity. It's very much about who we are, and I think it very much also enhances our society. So we should embrace the fact that we do have a rich cultural tapestry here, and no one has anything to fear from each other's identity and culture and beliefs. It's something that we should celebrate. It's something that we should work day and night to try to create that type of society. I certainly will work with other ministers to try to build that inclusive society. I want us to work across the executive to expand cultural, to support cultural diversity, to celebrate cultural diversity. It's a very positive thing in any society, and I think that we need to create the opportunities for all of our people right across to learn and engage with their history, with their identity, with their culture, with their language, and the things that are important to them.
Mr.
Speaker. And First Minister, can I take you back again to the issue of victims of terrorism? In December 1996, the IRA came into the Royal Victoria Children's Hospital to target both my husband and myself. Do you consider Nigel and I to have been innocent victims of IRA terrorism?
I think the member previously asked me a similar question a number of years ago, and I did invite you to come and have a conversation. Let's sit down and talk about the past. That's the way in which we heal. That's the way in which we try to move forward. So my door is open to you at all times to have a sit down and have a conversation. I think it's really, really important that if we're going to help, never asking anybody to move on, but if we're going to move forward, then we need to have an honest conversation about the fact that there were so many injustices, so many hurt so much hurt across our society, across all sides. Many lives have been trespassed. Let's try and find a way to heal. I am more than happy to sit down with you and discuss that even further.
Mrs. Dodds.
Mr. Speaker, so once again, the First Minister cannot condemn the actions of the criminals in the IRA. And that is part of the problem here, because she talks about an inclusive society, but she doesn't want to include the innocent victims of terrorism. Do you understand the impact of the eulogising of IRA terrorists is having on innocent victims?
I think if we're going to talk about the past, then we must do so honestly. I think it's important that we actually recognise that there are many people out there that caused hurt in our society. Whether that, and you can't just cherry pick. You don't get to pick who you think is a victim and who isn't. There are many injustices in the past. There are many people in terms of British state loyalists who donned the Ulster Beret. Your own party would know a lot about that. In terms of those who ran weapons and state agents. So let's not be selective. Let's honestly try and find a way to recognise that there are different experiences and different narratives of the past. That's the first step in terms of reconciliation. And let's use all of our efforts to try and build for a better future. That's what I am focused on. I believe that's what the majority of people here in the society are focused on also.
Moving on to questions to the Economy Minister, and I call... Okay, take it easy a moment. The Minister gets your place.